Even just the flight to come to Canada, I could not afford it. I could not afford the flight to come to Canada. That was the first impression of, oh my gosh, this is so expensive. I cannot afford this. And then I actually asked for an increase in pay, and I didn't get that increase in pay. So I was like, okay, peace out. Because as I said, I was not going to be poor. How much does a house cost, and like how much is the mortgage? I did all those research, and I was looking, I'm like, there's no way I can afford these things. I would always be in debt. I would always be struggling. I saw that. Today I will be talking about why I left my 9 to 5 job to travel to Canada. Now, first of all, when people are in government jobs, it's always like you're set, like you got money once you work into a government job. Now, in my background, I worked in a government organization, and I was also working in a law firm previously. So initial thought is that once you're in jobs like these, you definitely have money, which was definitely not the case. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. On this channel, I talk about life in Canada, Canadian immigration, and personal development. Now today I will be talking about why I left my 9 to 5 job to travel to Canada, despite the fact that it is a decent job and it's also like one of the jobs that people would want. My reasoning for wanting to relocate to Canada is for many different reasons. There were many different reasons why I wanted to travel to Canada. And just to start it off, my Canadian journey and my thoughts about Canada actually started back in high school. When I was in high school, I saw a brochure, a flyer that was on the notice board, and it had the opportunity to travel to Canada for probably 1 year to work. And that was the first time that I was interested in traveling to Canada, because I saw how much they make per hour, and when I saw that amount, I was like, Canada, here I come. However, after seeing that, that was definitely the first impression of me wanting to come to Canada. Previously, and just as someone being in Jamaica, I always saw signs throughout the country where I always see these signs about Canada needing skilled workers and Canada wanting immigrants. They want people to come to Canada. So me seeing that, I'm like, oh, so people actually want to, so Canada wants people to come to the country to work and things like that. Yes, I saw it, but it's like I didn't really take it seriously until when I was graduating and I saw that flyer, and then I was like, when I saw the income, I'm gonna be very honest, it's when I saw the per hour rate on the income. I don't remember how much it was, but once I saw that, I was like, yeah. And that was my first time when I was like, yeah, I want to come to Canada. No, afterwards, I did start to do some research. I did some research, and I was like looking at the cost to come to Canada, and there wasn't a lot of resources back then. That was probably when I was 16 years old. I was looking at everything, and I didn't travel to Canada until 23 years old. However, I've been looking into coming to Canada since I was 16 years old. So that just shows you that if you're someone who've been trying to come to Canada and looking into how to come to Canada for like 1 year, definitely know that that's very short compared to me. Like I've been doing research about coming to Canada for 7 years before I finally got here. And one of the first impression that I saw is that even just the flight to come to Canada, I could not afford it. I could not afford the flight to come to Canada. That was the first impression of, oh my gosh, this is so expensive. I cannot afford this. And remember, I'm just finishing school. And just to tell you a little bit about my family background, I come from a poor family. My family does not have money. And I would say they weren't necessarily poor, it's more like broke, but they were broke pretty much all the time. So because of that and not having the money most of the time, definitely just seeing that there's a possibility of earning a certain amount in Canada piqued my interest, because I saw the struggles and I knew that there's no way I was going to go through the same thing. And I'm definitely not going to bring a child into the world in that type of situation at all. Like, I would not do that to somebody. Yeah, so that's when my Canadian interest started. Now, my initial plan is that, okay, since I cannot afford even the flight to come to Canada, then I'm just going to have to work up the ladder, the corporate ladder, and make money. And when I have enough money, I'll come to Canada. That was my initial plan. And that is when I changed it where, oops, can't travel to Canada, but I'll work my way up. And I did a lot of research. Oh, that's where I left off. So I did a lot of research on how to come to Canada, and I saw that if you wanted to come as a permanent resident, you needed like 5 years of work experience, and my work experience haven't even started as yet. So I didn't have any experience, didn't have the education that they had. I didn't really have anything at that point. But that was actually when I first wanted to come to Canada. It was 7 years before I actually got here. And when I did the research, I decided, okay, I'm just going to have to climb up the corporate ladder. And while I was doing that research, I did check like the amount of money that I would earn as someone in like the field that I was looking into. I was looking like, okay, how much does a manager make? So I was like, okay, I'm gonna join the company at the line worker, and then I'm gonna work myself up to management. And that was my initial plan. I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and then eventually I would travel to Canada, because at that point I already knew, like, as I said, the income was definitely the first driver and the first reason, the first thing that piqued my interest to come to Canada. That was what I saw first. So afterwards, so one of the main reasons why I also skipped jobs multiple times. So so one of the things that people would see about me is that I leave jobs very quickly. And the reason why I leave jobs is because I'm working on climbing the corporate ladder. Like, that's something people always talk about, climbing the corporate ladder. So that was my goal as well. I wanted to keep growing, and the main factor was always better income, because as I said, I was not going to be poor, and that was the reason why I did not look into having kids and stuff like that. It's really because I would not be comfortable bringing a child into the world with no great financial status, because I looked into things like, how much does a house cost, and like, how much is the mortgage. I did all those research, and I was looking, I'm like, there's no way I can afford these things. I would always be in debt. I would always be struggling. I saw that, and I was like, even for an apartment, like just having an apartment, like, the apartment would be like the same amount as what I was making as my total income. That didn't include taking anything out. That would be just for an apartment. And I just saw that it was not going to work, and I would always be poor. I would always be chasing my tail. I would always be in debt. I would have to be taking out loan to get furniture for a house. I would have to be taking out a loan to buy the house. I would have to take out loan. I mean, buying the house makes sense why you would need a loan for that, but even just to afford furniture and to afford a car and to afford all these things, I saw that there was no way I was going to afford it. There was absolutely no way. So one of the biggest things that I started to see is that I needed work experience. So once I finished college, I got work experience, and I tried to stay in an organization for the work experience. And once I got the work experience, like, most things were like, you need 2 years worth of work experience. So I got the 2 years of work experience, and then I actually asked for an increase in pay, and I didn't get that increase in pay. So I was like, okay, peace out. Because as I said, I was not going to be poor. You know what? So many people see things, and it's so difficult when you look at life and you see where people are struggling just to buy food. The hardest part is when you come to Canada and then people tell you all these things, and you're like, I don't have that opportunity. Like, I can't just come to school and not work. Like, I don't have that option. You have that option. I don't. It was very difficult when so many people were saying like, oh, you can't be working and going to school, especially because I was a full-time student. I was doing full course loads and I was still working, and so many times persons were saying that you can't be working like that. I'm like, yeah, you see it as, oh, you don't have to work like that, but for me, I gotta go pay my rent. There's no one covering my rent there. Like, I gotta work to pay all of this. When I was in that job where I was building up the work experience, my income was extremely low. It was lower than the average income that people actually earn in that sector and in that job position. It was actually lower than that, and I worked in it just for the work experience, because I would have left way faster if it wasn't for work experience reasons. And as I said, right after I asked for increase in pay, didn't get it, and then I left. I waited until I get another job before I left. And when I got into that job, I got double my income, and that is when I started to look back into coming to Canada. When I started to double my income, and I was living off the low income for so many years. And while I was making that low income, I was still saving, but it was very, very difficult. Like, I could not afford. Yes, I could buy food, and if you were in this job and you had children and you had to pay for an apartment, it would be very, very difficult. But I didn't have any kids, and I was sharing my apartment, so it wasn't as difficult for me. But in order to save, I had to make a lot of sacrifices in order to save. And it's not even like I'm making sacrifices on doing extra things. Like, if I wanted, I could just spend off all of the money, and it's really nothing. Like, that salary was extremely low, and it would be very difficult just to afford just the basics with that job. And I remember when I was in that job and income was so low, but I really had to save, because if I wasn't saving, then I would be further from finally being able to travel to Canada. But that has always been my goal, is to travel to Canada, because I saw that it was easier compared to when I was back in my home country. When I finally transitioned in the other job, I was started to make double my pay. So when I'm making double my pay, I actually did not increase my expenses at all. I did the exact same thing as though I was in that job. So the double paid 50% of my salary was being saved, plus the amount that I was previously saving, which was probably about 25% of my income I was saving previously. So all of this saving that I've been saving did contribute to me the amount of money I needed to travel to Canada. So I saved all that money, and then so I was saving 25% of my income when I was doing the first job, and then when I got the next job, basically I was saving 75% of my income in the second job, because as I said, I didn't increase my expenses at all. Like, I probably increased it by 1%, but that was it. And that was just to buy fruits. That was the only thing. Like, I'm telling you that I struggled to pay the basic things with a regular salary, and I didn't have children, I didn't have a house, I didn't have mortgage, I didn't have any of those things, and I was still struggling. So that just shows you like the situation that I was in. So long years of thinking about Canada, many years, and I do not have anyone who lives in Canada. I did not have any support to travel to Canada, but I knew that I could not stay in the situation that I was in. Yeah, so afterwards, I started to save 75% of my income. And once I got the job, I knew how much my salary was. I already started to do research on the flight and like how I can travel to Canada and stuff like that. I did that research once I knew how much I was going to earn, and I already knew that I was going to save it. When I did the research, and I saw that, oh, I already have the plane fare now. Oh, I have this. Oh, I have that. I was like, oh my gosh. If I save this amount more, by that time I will be able to travel to Canada. And that is how I traveled to Canada. I was saving 25% of my income for the first couple of years that I was working. And then afterwards, my income doubled, and then I did not increase my expenses at all. So I started to save 75% of my income. And once I did that, I saw where I could come to Canada finally. And I actually wanted to come to Canada as a worker. But I was so scared to come to Canada as a worker because the thing that they were telling me about was a 6-month program. I'm like, you want me to leave my permanent job to come to Canada for 6 months? That's not gonna happen. 6 months? That's not good enough. I cannot leave my permanent job to come to Canada for 6 months. Like, I need something longer than that. And then that is when I decided to come as a student. And as you can see, when I come as a student, I was here for 3 years, which was a lot longer than leaving my job for 6 months. And then if I left my full-time job, come to Canada for a 6-month program, what happens after that 6 months? What if I never get to come back to Canada after that 6 months? What if there is no way of extending anything after that 6 months? I was like, no, that's not going to happen. Like, I'm not, I'll take risk, but I'll take calculative risk. Calculative risk, like coming to Canada as a student. No, the reason why I decided to come to Canada as a student is because afterwards I can work for 3 years after. That made a way more sense to come to Canada and get to work for 3 years compared to coming to Canada and working for 6 months and then go home, and then it's like, what happens now? Do I go get back another job? Like, what's the point of coming to Canada for just 6 months and that's it? So that is why I came here as a student, because I knew that I would get the work permit afterwards. I would be eligible for the work permit afterwards. That is how I was able to travel to Canada. I know many people are curious, like, how are you able to travel to Canada with no support? I don't have any family in Canada that supported me to come here. Yeah, so that was how I did it, and it was worth it. It was worth it. Like, yes, there are many challenges when it comes to Canada, but based on the challenge that I saw back in Jamaica, this challenge is still way worth it than the challenge that I had to face back in Jamaica, which is being poor. Being poor is very stressful. It's very difficult to not be able to know how on earth you're going to find food for tomorrow, or just not being able to buy fruits and vegetables. And for me, I'm a very simple person, and I do not want a lot to be comfortable. I don't need a lot to be comfortable, and I can just do the most basic things. Like, for me, I'm comfortable once I have my space to myself. It is clean, and I can buy healthy food. That's always been my goal. A nice apartment that is clean and not super clustered. Food, and any type of healthy food for me is the main thing. Healthy food was one of the biggest things that I could not afford when I was in Jamaica. I couldn't afford healthy food, and I really wanted to buy it, but I could not afford it. I couldn't afford buying fruits. I couldn't afford buying vegetables, and that was very difficult for me. And I know, like, some people say that's no big deal, but for me it's a huge deal, and that's what I really wanted. Just imagine I came to Canada just for fruit. That wasn't the only thing. Like, while doing my research, I got to hear that Canada was like one of the safest places to live, and I saw pictures and videos of Canada, and I saw how beautiful it is, and those things also included why I came. It wasn't just to buy fruits and vegetables, but yes, it was difficult. It was hard, but I am still grateful for all the experiences that I have here, and all the benefits that I've gained since I've been here, and just being able to get to know different people, different cultures. It's just a lot, different things that I didn't even strive to achieve, but I achieved. But yeah, it's been one of the best opportunities that I could ever ask for, to be honest, and I'm really happy that I'm here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you found this even inspiring. That would be nice if you were inspired, and just know that it took me 7 years to travel here. So if you think that, oh, you've been trying to come to Canada for a year and that's a long time, just think about me working towards coming to Canada for 7 years. Like, that's not easy. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Remember to thumbs up the video. It definitely helps out my channel if you thumbs up the video. Please just press the thumbs up button. It really helps, and the subscribe is right beside it. So definitely, if you want to hear more of my Canadian journey, definitely subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.